Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we're here with my first impressions review of the MCU's Secret Invasion. This is the newest Disney Plus series for the MCU, and compared to other shows, this has come out with very little fanfare. Like, there was extremely small amounts of build up for this compared to others. You have all these other shows that have come out from Loki, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And all of these have had exceptional build up. They've all been promoted and like just hyped up. But Secret Invasion hasn't been. And that's honestly weird. Like, maybe the point is because of it being like, the Secret Invasion and everything, and maybe that's why. But I just, it feels weird because it just feels like it's going to hurt the overall viewership. Because here's the thing, I didn't know this was coming out yet until like a week ago. I honestly, for the most part, I had completely forgotten about it because it's not being properly advertised for. No one was talking about it going into this. But I will tell you right now, we are going to be talking about spoilers, major spoilers. So I'm giving you this warning right now, just as a general sense of this episode. I had some issues with it, for sure, but it definitely builds some stuff up in a satisfying enough way. It's not perfect by any means, though, and probably one of the weaker first episodes of one of these Disney Plus MCU shows. But let's actually get into spoilers. So here's your warning once again. We are about to head into spoiler territory. So let's talk about stuff in 3, 2, 1, now. So one of my main issues with this series is, like, going into it, I guess you could say, is the concept. Because going into it, I know that the entire plot was basically going to be Skrulls are bad guys now. The enemies of this series are the Skrulls. Fury and his allies are going to have to take them on. And so my thought is like, okay. You introduce Skrulls in Captain Marvel, and throughout this entire time, they've been good guys. Now you're suddenly going to have the Skrulls be bad guys like they are originally in the comics? How are you going to work this out? Thankfully, they actually came up with something that makes sense within the context of the MCU and just kind of in general. See, there is a rebel faction of Skrulls in this. We still have good Skrulls like Talos, but Gravik, he's leading a rebel faction that are basically terrorists. That's what it amounts to. They are basically terrorists who want to take over and harvest from the Earth because they didn't get the planet they were promised from Fury and Carol back in the times of Captain Marvel, back in the 90s. So they're basically just salty that they haven't gotten what they were promised yet and are being little bitches about it. That sums it up pretty well, I feel. Now, before we get into a lot of the plot stuff, I want to cover this just real quick right off the bat here. The opening sequence is absolute bullshit. Not only does it just look terrible, but the reason it looks terrible is because it's like legitimately AI. They used AI art to make the opening sequence. In other words, they stole. They actively chose to steal, commit insane levels of theft, because that's what AI art is. It's theft. It's like there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is entirely unethical and wrong. There is not a single thing about it that is right. So the fact that the MCU, the Disney or Marvel, whatever you want to quantify this as, or qualify, not quantify, whatever you want to qualify this as, it's like the fact that they used it is not surprising, unfortunately, because it's like whenever anything like this comes along, any kind of medium or medium, any kind of entertainment or just general like electronics, or you know what I mean. There's a word I'm blanking. Don't you hate when that happens? Um, but any kind of like entertainment medium or company or whatnot, they always like go to use it. It's like anything becomes even slightly like mainstream. So it's like with AI, of course they're going to use that. Because let's be honest, big companies like this don't give a flying fuck about ethics. They never have, and they never will. You know the phrase that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism? You know, that doesn't just apply to food. A lot of people like to use that specifically for food, like, oh, all these food companies are terrible. If you try to boycott them because of the company's beliefs or who they donate to or whatever, you're not going to be able to eat anything because it's all bad. And it's like, to a degree, yes, there are certain exceptions you can make depending on specific things, but to a degree, yes. And again, this goes for other things too. Basically, any product or service can definitely work under this idea. Because it's not just food companies. You can say any major company is like that. Like, Disney is known for being shitty. Like, actively known for being shitty. People still watch Disney movies. Why? Because they like the movies. And they support the animators in terms of the animated films, the directors, the actors. It's not about the companies, because again, if you were to boycott companies because of them being unethical or, you know, terrible working environments and whatnot, you'd have to boycott literally everyone. There's no such thing as an ethical company. Just like there's no such thing as a good war. When capitalism exists, you're not going to be able to do anything with that. The only exceptions are the likes of like mom and pop shops and stuff like that. Independently owned businesses. Of course, those can be just fine. Because they're not these big companies run by capitalist greedy fucks. But I'm not going to get into all of that here. The point is, this AI opening, it looks absolutely atrocious. It doesn't even look good. If it looked good, that would be one thing, but it's fucking ugly as sin. It is probably one of the worst looking opening sequences I've seen in anything. Legitimately. I actively do not want to watch it again. And again, it's AI, so it's completely unethical. But again, not really much of anything to do about that, unfortunately. But let's actually talk about the content of the episode. So the episode mostly focuses around Fury, Maria Hill, and Talos working to uncover the plans that Gravik has and stop them. When you boil it down, it's that simple. But there's a lot of moving parts involved in this. We have an old agent friend of Fury's that he has to deal with as basically a rival for this battle. We have the fact that Fury is clearly shaken by the events of the blip and everything. He's suffering legitimate PTSD. We actually see him have a PTSD moment in the episode. We also have the fact that Talos' daughter, Gaia, is working for Gravik. And at one point, she actually starts to give Talos information, but it ends up leading to basically nothing being stopped. And it's unclear if she knew that the bags were decoys or not. It's actually unclear. But they were decoys, and it led to Gravik setting off the bombs, which in turn led to what a lot of people are probably mad about. I haven't heard any thoughts on this yet, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are mad because Maria Hill was killed. Maria Hill is one of those characters who's always confounded me with the MCU because she has this really, really dedicated fan base, and I can't for the life of me figure out why. She is such a boring character. It's nothing against the actress. I think she does a great job. It's just Maria Hill is not that great of a character. She never has been. She always came across as just the most generic, bland side character to Fury. She never felt like she was anything more than that. And you could say, like, okay, maybe that's a fault of the writing and all, which, yeah, probably. But the point is, that's still the case. Even if it's not the fault of the actress or anything, it's like she never felt like a real character in the MCU. Not compared to most of the other characters. Honestly, Ross is more of a real character. Like, I'm not just talking about the heroes here, like Thor and Captain America and Hulk and all. Like, even Ross felt like more of an actual character. Maria Hill just never really stood out. So her death here doesn't really hurt that much to me. It's more about the impact of it on the characters, especially Fury. It's definitely more about what that's going to lead into. Because the actual death itself, it really didn't affect me at all. It just didn't really do anything. A lot of this episode, and I assume a lot of this 6-episode series, is going to deal with not knowing who a Skrull is or not. Because the opening sequence centers around seeing Agent Ross meeting with this kind of conspiracy theorist agent friend of his. And you see it ends up resulting in a fight and everything. And Ross ends up escaping and being tailed by someone. And you soon find out by the end that the tail is Talos, and that Ross is actually not Ross. He was a Skrull the entire time. And there was no giveaway on that. There was nothing to tell us that. So we thought it was Ross the entire time, but ends up being a Skrull instead. And that's the point. That's how it's supposed to be. Skrulls blend in pretty perfectly. So, yeah, it works in that regard. But that is the question. Who is a Skrull or not? Because when Gravik killed Maria Hill, he was disguised as Fury. So, yeah, she didn't even notice. She thought it was him. But Fury had been chasing around this one Skrull that kept changing forms in the middle of a crowd, which, yeah, that's one thing that bothered me a little bit. It's like you're in the middle of a crowd and you keep changing forms. It's like someone would have fucking noticed that. Like, they start off initially as like this little girl with a rainbow ball, and then like basically walk behind something, and it's like there's all these people still right around them, but they walk behind something, and suddenly they're this middle-aged man. It's like no one noticed that. No one at all. I'm sorry, that's not believable. It's not like they went behind a pillar like off to the side of the festival that they were at or anything. No. It was literally right in the middle of the crowd. And every single time that this Skrull transformed, it was right in the middle of the crowd. Someone would have fucking noticed. It doesn't work. Like, the scene was trying to be like all interesting, showing Fury following this Skrull who keeps changing, but who keeps very clearly showing that they're doing so. Like, they're not trying to hide it from Fury. They're staring Fury down practically the entire time. Almost like they're taunting him. Probably are. But yeah, it makes no sense that they weren't noticed by any of the people there. Like, it does not work at all. Um, but yeah, Talos's daughter Gaia is played by Emilia Clarke, who people had been wondering who was going to play, who she was going to play in this series, and yeah, she does a good job. She's your very stereotypical angsty teen character, even though I don't think she's actually a teen. I don't know what her age equivalents would be, because Talos said his age equivalents would be like in the 40s. So maybe she's like early 20s, possibly. Either way, that's age equivalence. To be fair too. But anyways, the point is, it's like that. It's not anything against her, like Amelia as an actress. It's definitely more the writing that just it's like, okay, you make her an angsty teenager who's upsetty at her father, and yes, I just said upsetty. Deal with it. And she's now working for a literal terrorist group because her father made her sad. Also, she finds out that her mother had passed away. Her mother was killed, and that it was because of Gravik. And she cries about it, but again, it's unclear if at the end she was she knew about the decoys or not. If she did, after finding out her mother died and after all of this and all, it's just like we're supposed to see her as that terrible if that's the case, right? Because if that is the case, she is absolutely terrible. Not as a character, as a person. If that isn't the case, if she didn't know, then she didn't know. Can't really blame her for that if she didn't know. Um, but yeah, we see that throughout this, Fury is just very much a shell of his old self. And it's very much represented visually, too. The dude is scruffy as fuck. Not only because of the big ass, unkempt beard, but even his clothes. Like, he's not wearing, like, any fancy suits or anything. Not even wearing his eye patch. He's wearing a beanie, some dusty old beat up clothes, like a jacket and sweater or whatever. I don't know exactly. I'd have to go back and look at it again. But it's like these old dusty, like almost homeless dude looking clothes. And it's like, we get it. You're going through some shit. We also see a little bit of Rhodey during the episode. He just basically reveals to the higher ups that, yeah, Fury left Saber. We don't know where he is. He's AWOL. Yeah, that's going to come into play later on in the season, clearly. So I'm not sure when this takes place as well. That's another thing to note. Does this take place before the Marvels? Because Fury is in the Marvels. And I believe he looks normal. Like, he looks like classic Fury. From what I remember of the trailer for the Marvels that was released. So, if that's after this, then that means a lot of this series is going to be Fury getting his groove back. Kind of like coming back from this PTSD with the blip and, you know, becoming the Fury that we all know and love again. Though this also could possibly take place after the Marvels. I don't know. I haven't really seen any information to say one way or the other. Carol's been mentioned, but to my knowledge, nothing was mentioned about specifically the events of the Marvels. Not that I could tell, at least. But yeah, this had some potential. It led off pretty well. But there were some things that I just wasn't a fan of or thought didn't work or just didn't like. And overall, it was honestly kind of boring at parts. It felt like an MCU series, don't get me wrong. But there's a lot of it that also felt like something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is not a compliment at all, by the way. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was shit. And it honestly did not deserve to last as long as it did. It was so fucking boring and just uninteresting and just not well written. In my opinion, of course. From what I saw of it, to be fair as well. But yeah, it's like a lot of this feels like that on top of feeling like MCU. So it's kind of, again, a bit of a mixed reaction to this. Like, there's certain aspects that I really do like, and certain aspects that just didn't work for me. Like, like I said, the death of Maria Hill here, it's like very clearly meant to be this big, shocking moment to end off the episode. I just didn't care. It's like, am I supposed to care? Like, honestly, I forget about her most of the time. She's not a memorable character in the MCU. She's just not. Again, nothing against the actress. It's entirely on the way that she's written and the way that she's just not really given the opportunities to shine. It sucks, but it is what it is. But all of that being said, of course, tell me in the comments below, what did you think of this first episode of the MCU's Secret Invasion? Let me know your thoughts, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See you all next time.